Okay, so hello everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's so wonderful to see all of your beautiful faces. My name is Reverend Candace Shibata. It is August 15th, 2021, and we're gathered here to conduct our annual Hiroshima Doshikai Memorial Service. So I thank all of you for joining us today. I'd like to share my screen so you know exactly what we're doing today. That way it'll make it easy for you to join along with me during all of the service components as well. Okay. So, as always with all of our services, we start with the kancho, or tolling of the bell. And typically the kancho is done on the bigger bell outside, but since we're just here doing Zoom, I'll do the tolling of the bell right beside me. And if you could recall, the tolling of the bell allows us to hear a signal that we'll be starting the service, and it allows us to quiet our minds and quiet our bodies to be in this very present moment. If you can imagine, over a year probably has passed since this particular group has been able to get together because of the pandemic, and being able to come together, even if it is through Zoom, really allows us to be together to celebrate this oneness, and also turn our hearts and minds to those individuals who have passed away during this particular maybe 2 years, who are part of the Hiroshima Doshikai. And so the tolling of the bell allows us to really be mindful of that and to be able to sit together. So if you will, with me, sit during the tolling of the bell to prepare your hearts and minds and bodies for this particular service. Okay, so we'll continue the service with just a very short opening meditation, words from the Dalai Lama. So if you can join me by placing your palms together for this opening meditation. World peace begins with inner peace. World peace begins with inner peace. From the Dalai Lama. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandavats, 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 namandavats. Okay, so good morning again, and thank you so much for joining us this morning during this beautiful summer day for the Hiroshima Doshikai Annual Memorial Service. And we have gathered here today to remember our friends and family members of the Hiroshima Doshikai who have passed away. This gathering also allows us to reflect upon and remember the victims of the bombing of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and of course, the bombing of Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. So we'll continue the service with the chanting of Sambujo. And Sambujo is called Three Respectful Callings. And we call upon Amida Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions to be present during today's service. And with each calling, we respond with the words Sange Raku to welcome them. This will be followed by the Hyobyakumon, or the aspiration or dedication of this service, and of course the reading of our dear friends in the Dharma who have passed away from Hiroshima Doshikai. Okay, so I'd like to share my screen again so you can chant along with me during Sambujo. Pujo Mira Nyorai Niyudo Jo San Ge Da Bujo Shaka Nyorai Niyudo Jo San Ge Da Ku Pujo Jibo Nyorai Niyudo Jo San Ge Da Ku. Let us pause for a moment and turn our hearts in aspiration to the Buddha of infinite light and life. On this memorial service for the Hiroshima Doshikai, we have gathered here in memory of the following people who have passed away. They are Mrs. Mitsuko Mitsi Adachi, Mrs. Katie Komure, Mrs. Evelyn Hamamoto, Mr. John Babaoka, Mrs. Sonoe Motoyoshi, Mrs. Kyoko Sugimoto. Those who have departed and those who still remain, meeting again in spirit upon this memorial service. On this occasion, let us seek spiritual values to give meaning to a grateful and fuller life. May the boundless and supreme light of wisdom shine within our hearts and minds and guide us to follow the true Buddhist way of life in deepest gratitude. Please join me in Gassho. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namandavats, 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 Namandavats. Okay, so we'll continue the service with the chanting of Sambutsuge, and I'd like to share my screen with you so you can chant along at home. And I've mentioned this in my other services, but chanting, even though we're not here at the temple together, chanting is a way for us to be together as one. Chanting allows us to be able to hear the Buddha's teachings, to praise the Buddha for these teachings, and to express our gratitude for the teachings that we utilize in our daily lives as well. And as I mentioned, it allows us to be connected to other Buddhists from the past and present time, and even in the future. So please take this opportunity to chant along with me at home for the chanting of Sambutsuge, and also for those families who have lost a loved one during this particular year. I welcome you to offer incense at your Homobutsudan or home altar. 고갱기김 이지무곡 묘세예묘 무요도샤 니치가츠마니 슈고에노 가이시츠온페이 윤약주목 묘라요겐 조세무린 쇼가쿠다이온 고르지포 가이몬쇼진 산마이지에 이토쿠무료 슈쇼케우 진타이제넨 쇼부츠호카이 구진진노 구고가이타이 무묘요쿠누 세소뇨무 니노시시 진토쿠무료 구근고다임 지혜지묘 고묘이소 신노다이센 강가사붓 자이쇼 가도쇼지 미프게닷 부세조이 가이니쇼진 뇨세산마이 지혜이조 고세이토쿠붓 부교시간 이사이쿠쿠 이사다이안 게시우붓 야쿠센노쿠만 무료다이쇼 人小仏不尿愚道検証不逆異尿五邪小仏正解不不加減無種節度公明師匠変死小国妙税精進異人難量量が差仏国土第一公衆奇妙道如如に無道がと愛民道達一切地方大小死熱症状糸が国気楽和の鉱物神妙税が師匠発願の非力少所欲自法生存知恵無限浄土子孫知が信用けど心身食毒中家業精進人寿福家ナマナブナマナブナマナブナマナブナマナブナマナブがにしくどく平等聖在道本も大心おりょうあんあこナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツナマンダウツ。Thank you so much for joining me for the suture chanting of Sambutsuge. I wanted to try something different. We haven't been really putting in gathas in our Zoom meetings during the Dharma school year, but I wanted to try it and see if this would work today. I kind of miss the gathas and singing and hearing everybody's voices, and quite possibly you might miss hearing the gathas as well. So please sing along with me the gatha Namu Amida Butsu.
When life is fair sunlight gilds the day, when fortune smiles and the flowers adorn our way, oft let us pause with grateful hearts to say, Namo Amida Butsu. Even though our way leads 'neath a darkened sky, and to our loved ones pain and death draw nigh, our tears may flow, yet trustingly we cry, Namo Amida Butsu.
Thank you so much for singing along with me. This song is actually very nostalgic for me. Of course, I would sing it growing up at home during services here at the temple. But for me, it has a very deeper meaning, as I remember that we sang this song at my mother's funeral, and quite possibly for some of your loved ones as well. You might have remembered this song. So it does really remind us of just all of these karmic conditions of our lives, being born, and of course, death, and the loss of our loved ones as well, and how we definitely can, in every occasion, put our hands together and say Namo Amida Butsu. So I hope that you appreciated listening to this song or singing along as much as I did. Okay, so we'll continue the service with the three treasures. So if you can please place your palms together with me for the recitation of the three treasures. Heart is born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. We do not deliver ourselves. In the present life, no hope is there that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of your way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves your supreme will. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord in your life of harmony, in the spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandauts, 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 namandauts. So at this time, I wanted to share a Dharma message with all of you. And of course, this message is really inspired by, of course, our loved ones who we have lost, especially those members that we have lost during the last maybe 2 years or 1 year. And of course, just thinking about all of the conditions that are in our lives as well. So to begin, will you please join me in Gassho? For the sake of beings, I will open forth the treasure store and give away universally its treasures of virtues. Among the multitudes of beings, I will preach the Dharma with the lion's roar. From the Sutra of the Buddha of Immeasurable Life. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namandots, Namandots, Namandots. So again, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to let me share just a few thoughts and feelings for today's service. And so as I was preparing for today's service, I was on vacation, and although I didn't go anywhere, taking time to relax my mind and my body in the comfort of my home was actually very relaxing. However, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And as we approached the anniversaries, of course, of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the beginning of this month, I began to think about this inner peace, not only in my own mind, but also in the world around me as well. And so that's why, too, I think taking this respite to maybe experience some inner peace and some relaxation was very appropriate, that I started thinking about this service as well. So some of you may know that before I became a minister, I was a case manager for children with special needs. And I also studied and interned as a marriage and family therapist. So growing up, I always knew I wanted to help others. And maybe quite possibly in high school, that's when I decided that I wanted to become a therapist. And although I may not be practicing therapy in my own office, in different ways now, I still see myself as providing support and maybe sometimes therapy to others as a minister as well. So in today's world, with all of the different circumstances and the conditions that we're dealing with today, I was kind of thinking about other helping professions and individuals who dedicate their lives to helping and supporting others. So many of us, including myself, have experienced loss and grief, anxiety and depression, and sought out the help and support from individuals in mental health professions or any other helping professions. So Wikipedia described helping professions as a profession that nurtures the growth of or addresses the problems of a person's physical, psychological, intellectual, emotional, or spiritual well-being. It also includes social work, and the ministry. I came to the conclusion that the Buddha was also in the helping profession, and more specifically, like a good therapist or a good doctor. I apologize if the connection is bad. I'm getting notifications that my internet is unstable, so I apologize in advance if I'm cutting out just a little bit. So let's talk about Buddha as a doctor. Maybe you thought about Buddha as a doctor before, but as we know, the Buddha lived very luxurious because he was a prince of Sakya, and now what we call Nepal. And as you could recall, during his 20s, to kind of go exploring, and he came across a very old man, a very sick person, and a person who had died. And all of these sights of after leaving the palace left him very, very distraught and very troubled. And so he ventured out a fourth time and saw this person who was kind of wandering the village and renounced all of his worldly possessions. Despite being, living a very simple life, this person seemed very peaceful and very happy. And so he too then left the palace, wondering if he could end his suffering as well. So Siddhartha Gautama wandered the countryside for 6 years, living a life of very strict practices, even depriving his body of food. And after almost starving to death, he realized that these very strict, austere practices, they weren't the means to end suffering. So as we know, he sat under a Bodhi tree, meditated, and vowed not to move until he realized the path to end suffering. So fortunately, he did, and he became a fully enlightened being, a Buddha. And he saw the truth of our nature of suffering, the cause of suffering in the world. And he realized that there was this path to end the suffering in our lives as well. So initially, he was actually unsure if he should share this message and if people were able to comprehend what he had realized. So he initially kept this information to himself. However, he changed his mind, and the 5 first companions that he had that he was previously practicing with, he then encountered them again. And so this very first message that he gave to these 5 additional monks was essentially his first Dharma message. And he shared that there was a path to end suffering called the middle way. So as you recall, he lived a life of very luxurious life, and then on the other hand, left all of those luxuries behind to live a life of very austere practices. So he realized that there is this middle path that we can walk on, a path to end our suffering as well. So the Buddha said, no one can escape unhappiness or death. And if people expect only happiness in life, they'll be disappointed. So I think life and death, it's 2 sides of the same coin. And so we experience the suffering, but I believe that through this suffering allows us to be fully compassionate beings, or acknowledge how we can be compassionate, not only to ourselves, but to others as well. So when things aren't always the way that we want them to be, it might be troubling to understand why we're experiencing this. And even when maybe our body feels different, or maybe things in our mind are troubling us and causing us maybe anxiety or depression, we might even go to a doctor for all of these different ailments from head to toe. So when we go to the doctor, just like everyday encounters with the doctor, we may ask, well, what's wrong with me? And why am I sick? What's going to cure me of this illness? And what else do I have to do to get better? So we can, again, kind of think about maybe peace. That's the general maybe theme that I'm thinking about during this memorial service, our inner peace and the peace in the world as well. But again, it has to start within us. And so when we go to a doctor, we can even think of the Buddha, again, like a good doctor or a good therapist. So maybe the Buddha can kind of diagnose our illness, what's going on with us. And the Buddha can kind of figure out what's going on through different tests. And of course, the Buddha can prescribe a cure, and also tells us what to do with this treatment so that we can be well again. And so I'm thinking about this medical approach to even the 4 Noble Truths in our life. And again, we think about the 4 Noble Truths in regards to this medical model. Well, what's wrong with me? Well, like the first Noble Truth says, there's suffering in our lives. And there's different kinds of suffering. And also the Buddha knew that the suffering when we separate from our loved ones through death is a form of major suffering. So the second Noble Truth, why am I sick? Well, there's a cause to our sickness and our suffering. The third Noble Truth equates to, well, what will cure me? And there is a cure to our suffering. We have to stop maybe expressing that greed and anger and ignorance that we experience as human beings. And what do I have to do to get well would equate to the 4th Noble Truth, that there is a path to end our suffering, which we know is the Eightfold Noble Path as well. So during my lifetime, I just wanted to share maybe a personal example of how all of this may come together in regards to trying to find my inner peace. There's various times that I've been to the doctor for different ailments like migraines, intense heartburn called GERD. I had allergies, asthma. I was a young kid. experiencing blood pressure, cold and cough, some joint pain, and on occasion during this last year, I've had to receive a few COVID tests because of symptoms that I was experiencing. But I will be very candid and also let you know too that due to some losses in my life, including maybe a heartbreak that I had when I was 20, and of course, even the loss of my own mother, I sought out the help of a mental health professional, a marriage and family therapist. And it's because of my encounters and the support and help that I received that I was determined to help others as well. And I also wanted to pursue that profession. And there were times that I didn't understand why I was experiencing some of the grief or the loss because of a breakup. And I was clinging to that relationship, wanting to be in that relationship, missing my partner. But all of this was causing me even more suffering. And through the help of my therapist, I realized that I was able to let that relationship go because I was clinging to it, but my ex-boyfriend wasn't. And in essence, I was causing all of my suffering because of this clinging. And when I realized that, maybe a few years later, we were eventually able to be friends, which I truly appreciated because I loved this individual very much. And so now I wish him only the best. And although we don't talk at all, we're kind of living our own separate lives. I often think about him, but I think about him with kindness and love, and again, wish him well. And so, when I was going through all of these different maybe heartaches and difficulties, I had always turned to the Buddhist teachings as well. Even though it might have been difficult to see it at that time, I realized that the Buddhist teachings were always there for me, allowing me to have these experiences, even if I was suffering, even though I was experiencing loss. But there was kind of a Dharma message or a Nembutsu moment that I was able to encounter even after all of this loss. And so I wanted to reflect upon my intro, the quote that I started with. My opening meditation of my message went like this: for the sake of beings, I will open forth the treasure store and give away universally its treasure of virtues. Among the multitudes of beings, I will preach the Dharma with the lion's roar. And so because of the Buddha and the Buddha's vow to save all beings, the Buddha shared this teaching universally while he was enlightened. And we can even think about Amida Buddha always embracing us with wisdom and compassion as well, to allow us to see these Nembutsu moments in our life, to see this wisdom and compassion working in our life, and also allowing us to still feel connected to our loved ones who have passed away. And I think, again, as I mentioned in some funerals and memorial services, our hearts and minds are connected through love and memory with our loved ones, and that's never severed, even though they may physically not be here anymore. And of course, as always, we're connected with them when we think about them, when we talk about our loved ones with other people. And of course, when we put our hands together, when we say Namo Amida Butsu as the name of Amida Buddha as well. And thankfully, because of the Buddhist teachings, we're able, again, to have this deep understanding and these deep aha moments, which we call Nembutsu moments as well. So I hope, again, as we gather together today, we turn our hearts and minds to our loved ones who have passed away from the Hiroshima Doshi, and all of our past loved ones. And of course, think about and reflect upon those victims of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. And hopefully, and I'm working on it as well, trying to have this inner peace and understanding my own blind passions as well, so that that can resonate and that could ripple into world peace as well. Because again, as the Dalai Lama said, World peace begins with inner peace as well. So thank you so much for allowing me to share just a few thoughts and feelings, and also my personal story for today's Dharma message. So to conclude, will you please join me in Gassho? Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Nam Mandawats. Nam Mandawats. Nam Mandawats. Okay, so before we conclude our service, I wanted to do one last screen sharing so that we can do one closing meditation together, or recitation, which is the Judo Shinshuk Creed 2. And I do like to recite this on occasion with our Sangha members, with our congregation, as a beautiful reminder of the Judo Shinshu teachings and our life as Judo Shinshu followers as well. Please join me by placing your palms together in Gassho as we read the Judo Shinshuk Creed 2. I affirm my faith in Amida's infinite wisdom and compassion. Reciting the sacred name, I shall live with strength and joy. I shall look to Amida as guiding light. As I reflect upon my imperfect self, I live with gratitude for the perfect compassion which surrounds me at all times. I shall follow Amida's teachings. I shall understand the right path and resolve to spread the true teachings. I rejoice in Amida's wisdom and compassion. I shall respect and help my fellow beings and work for the good of my community. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Nam Mandawats. Nam Mandawats. Nam Mandawats. Nam Mandawats. Nam Mandawats. Okay. So that brings us to the conclusion of today's service. I wanted to express my appreciation for all of you for attending today's service. And also I would like to thank you for, of course, the beautiful flowers and the altar osonae as well. So thank you so much for the Hiroshima Doshi Kai for those kind offerings as well. And Kimi Ishihara for assisting me with the flowers, and of course, Tad Shibata for helping me this morning. Let's see, are there any announcements for the club itself? No? Okay. So thank you again for joining me today. I truly appreciate your attendance, and we're still on our short break, but we'll have our Shotsuki Memorial service again the first Sunday in September at 10:30 a.m. So hopefully you're on our mailing list or emailing list to join our service then. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. Of course, I'll go ahead and turn off the recordings at this time. And if you'd like to stay and say hello to one another, I welcome you to do that. So let me go ahead and turn off the recording.